We often picture native survival as simple just tents and fire. But what if they had a system more advanced than we ever imagined? No stoves, no blankets, no insulation, and yet they slept warm through blizzards. They layered the earth beneath them to trap air, heated stones and hid them under the bed, built microclimates around their own breath, regulated smoke holes like precision vents. Archaeologists found grass floors still intact, traces of heat, rings under ancient tipi sites, proof that warmth was engineered, not by luck, by wisdom. In this video, we'll uncover 7 native techniques that turned frozen plains into livable homes, lessons of warmth balance, and quiet survival. And by the end, you'll wonder who truly mastered winter first, them or us. The ground was the first enemy. Long before the wind tore at the teepee walls, before the snow sealed the plains, White the cold was already there, waiting beneath their feet. It didn't fall from the sky. It crept upward, silent, patient, like the slow breath of dead soil. Every night that frozen ground pulled the warmth from their bodies, not with violence, but with hunger. The earth itself seemed alive, feeding on their heat, whispering cold through the hides beneath them. In the Great Plains, winter could drive temperatures below minus 30 degrees Celsius. The kind of cold that cracks wood, silences rivers, and steals breath mid-air. A single mistake, a thin hide, a patch of bare soil could mean frostbite before dawn. And yet somehow they slept warm. Not by chance, not by brute strength, but by understanding. They learned that survival began below, not above. To live through winter, they had to tame the ground itself. They gathered dry grass, cattails, reeds, and buffalo hides, layering them thick beneath their bedding. Each strand of grass held a breath of air. Each hide pressed it still, and that trapped stillness, invisible, weightless, became their shield. It was insulation without knowing the word design, without blueprints born only from observation and patience. Archaeologists in Alberta have uncovered the truth beneath centuries of soil, blackened patches of compacted grass, 5 to 10 centimeters thick, preserved beneath tipi sites. Those dark layers tell a story of nights when the fire dimmed, yet the people slept through blizzards and woke alive. They weren't just surviving nature, they were shaping it. Modern physics confirms what they already knew in their bones. An air gap between layers can reduce heat loss by 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. To us, that sounds small. To them, it was the line between life and death, between waking or never waking again. The chill stopped. The silence grew. The night softened. They didn't fight the ground. They made peace with it. And in that quiet peace, they found warmth, not from fire, but from wisdom. When the fire went out, warmth didn't disappear, it moved. It sank beneath their bodies, hidden under layers of buffalo hide. Outside, the wind howled through nights that could drop to minus 30 sharp enough to freeze skin in minutes. But inside, under the soft folds of hide and reed, they slept above a quiet miracle, a secret hearth that no flame revealed. They learned to make the ground itself breathe warmth. Along frozen rivers, they searched for stones that remembered heat, dense, smooth, river-worn rocks that could glow red without cracking. They fed them to the fire until they shimmered like dusk embers. Then, with careful hands, they wrapped them in hide or packed them inside warm ash, burying them beneath their bedding. The ground turned alive, pulsing softly through the night. Each stone became a silent fire keeper. No smoke, no sparks, just slow, steady heat. Archaeologists in Alberta still uncover circles of char beneath ancient teepee floors, blackened halos marking where those stones once rested. A quiet kind of technology built without tools, guided only by instinct and memory. The warmth lasted 4 to 6 hours, long enough to cross from dusk to dawn. And if the temperature outside fell below minus 30, this invisible fire could mean the difference between a heartbeat that slowed or one that never rose again. What they created was radiant heat, centuries before science gave it a name. The same principle that warms our modern homes through pipes and coils. But theirs ran on patience, rhythm, and understanding. They knew which stones held their glow the longest, how to trap the warmth beneath hides, when to stir the ash to keep the pulse alive. It wasn't luck, it was design. The design of quiet survival. The heat spread, the air softened, the night held still. They mastered warmth without light, fire without fire. And in that silence, they discovered something greater than invention. The wisdom of listening, the art of patience, the technology of silence. Even with warm ground and glowing stones beneath them, the air inside the teepee still had teeth. It moved like a living thing, slipping down from the smoke hole, coiling through the dark, tasting the skin like frost on breath. Every movement stirred the cold. Every whisper made it dance. But they learned something vital out there on the Great Plains. You don't fight the air, you teach it to serve you. Each sleeper became their own small world, a self-contained climate built from breath and hide. They wrapped themselves in layers of buffalo skin, the soft fur turned inward, pressing close to their own heat. The first few breaths were cold, the next warmer, until the air around them thickened into a private pocket of warmth. Inside that cocoon, temperature and patience traded places one breath at a time. Modern studies reveal what they already knew. By touch, buffalo hides carry an R value around 3.5, nearly identical to a modern military sleeping bag. Primitive, not at all. It was adaptive engineering perfected by instinct and repeated over generations. The hides weren't just blankets. They were living walls, breathing barriers that trapped warmth and blocked drafts. Some even rubbed the inner fur with animal fat, adding a natural sealant that resisted moisture and wind. It wasn't comfort they built. It was a microclimate, body breath and hide working as one. At minus 30 degrees Celsius, that could mean survival without fire. A single human body radiates roughly 100 watts of heat. Trapped inside that layered shell, every watt stayed close, bouncing back with quiet precision. They didn't waste energy chasing warmth, they let it orbit them. One breath became a heater, one body a tiny warm room, one night a small miracle. They didn't conquer the cold, they cooperated with it. No wires, no engines, no noise, just stillness, just breath and air that listened. Inside, a teepee fire was both a gift and a gamble. Too much smoke, they'd choke. Too much wind, they'd freeze. Between the two lay a razor's edge of survival. There was no metal chimney, no sensor, no hum of machinery to keep balance. Only hide cord and instinct. Only wind and the wisdom to read it. At the top of every teepee, two great leather wings stretched open to the sky, the smoke flaps. From the ground, long cords dangled, simple yet elegant, letting one hand command the weather inside. When the night was calm, they opened the flaps wide, letting the air breathe through the peak and draw the smoke upward in a graceful spiral. But when a blizzard came rolling in, when the sky itself roared, they turned the flaps away from the wind, narrowing the gap, trapping the warmth like a living heartbeat under the hides. Every pull of the cord shifted the balance between life and frost. It was control without control, engineering born of listening. Modern tests confirm what they already practiced by field. Changing the flap angle by just 10 degrees can raise the interior temperature by 4 to 5 Celsius. A few centimeters of hide, a few heartbeats of timing, that was all it took. In their world, that meant comfort, safety, survival. It wasn't guesswork. It was precision built from patience. Archaeologists have found tipi rings and smoke hole structures perfectly aligned with prevailing wind directions across the plains. Every camp was a dialogue between architecture and air. They didn't fight the elements, they spoke their language. The teepee breathed like a lung, exhaling smoke, inhaling warmth. Its rhythm matched the people's calm, deliberate, alive. The fire burned steady. The smoke drifted out. The warmth stayed home. They didn't command the wind. They conversed with it, reading its voice, like reading life itself. Alone, the cold always wins. It doesn't strike at seeps. It crawls through cloth, through hide, through the thin barrier of breath and bone. A single body loses its heat to the night 1 degree at a time until stillness takes over. But when people draw close, when warmth becomes a shared act, something older than language stirs. They don't just endure the night, they outsmart it together. Inside, the teepee families didn't scatter into corners. They formed a circle. Children nestled at the center, where the air stayed softest. Adults lay around them shoulder to shoulder like a living wall of hide and heartbeat. One enormous buffalo robe covered them all, its heavy fur sealing in their shared breath. The last whispers of heat from the dying coals rose up, met the warmth trapped under that hide, and lingered a quiet tide of life circling through the group. The teepee didn't just shelter them, it pulsed with their rhythm. Anthropologists studying the Plains tribes call this the communal heat circle, a design of both survival and affection. Archaeological sites in Alberta and Montana even show sleeping pits arranged in curved patterns, suggesting family clusters rather than individuals. The logic was simple and profound. One person could survive a few hours at 30th degree. A group could survive the night. Modern thermographic studies confirm it. When bodies share space, the air between them can rise 8 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. It doesn't sound like much, but in that frozen silence, those few degrees mark the thin line between numbness and pulse, between frostbite and dawn. The embers faded, the cold pressed close, but warmth held its ground. They didn't just share space, they shared survival, because warmth was never just heat. It was trust, it was presence, it was life multiplied. Every fire tells a story, but only if someone stays awake to listen. On the Great Plains, the night was never silent. The wind spoke through the hides, the snow hissed against the fire pit, and somewhere between flame and shadow, a single ember decided who would live till morning. At minus 30 degrees Celsius, there was no margin for rest. Sleep too deeply and the coals would fade. Let the coals fade. And by dawn, the cold would have claimed someone's breath. So they built not just a camp, but a rhythm, a rotation, a quiet covenant of trust. Each night, one person would rise from their furs and take their place by the fire watcher. Their task wasn't heroic, it was sacred. They would feed the embers with small sticks, stir the ash until it glowed, and push the warmth toward the buffalo hide spread across the floor. Each sound, the crackle, the sigh, the shuffle of feet, was a kind of prayer. When their watch ended, another would wake wordless and take over. No speeches, no orders, just a nod, just faith. Archaeologists digging teepee sites in Alberta and Saskatchewan have uncovered layers of fine, evenly distributed ash. No thick burn marks, no gaps, proof the fire never truly went out. Night after night, generation after generation, that rhythm continued. It wasn't about energy efficiency, it was about belief. Fire didn't survive because it had fuel. It survived because someone chose to keep it alive. Even in the dark, the watchers could see each other by the flicker of flame. One adding wood, another rolling closer in their sleep, another murmuring softly. They weren't just keeping heat, they were keeping connection. The fire's pulse matched their own, a slow, steady reminder that survival was a shared act. No one froze, no one burned out. No one watched alone. To keep the flame alive was more than survival. It was trust made visible, because keeping fire was keeping each other. When dawn came, the fire was gone, or so it seemed. Only ash, only silence, but beneath the gray, the heart still glowed. They never started fire from nothing. That was wasteful, dangerous, and slow. Instead, they carried life from night to night, a living ember wrapped like a secret. The sacred ember tradition ran deep among Plains tribes. Before breaking camp, someone, often an elder or firekeeper, would take a small coal, bury it in cooled ash or buffalo dung, then wrap it inside damp hide. It looked dead, but it breathed hidden heat. quiet life. As they walked through snow and wind, that ember traveled with them, a red memory under the cold sky. By the next camp, a breath was all it took. The ember awoke. The fire returned. Tests show such insulated embers can retain heat for up to 12 hours, even in freezing temperatures, enough to bridge one world to the next. They didn't restart fire. They revived it. Again and again. Every day a resurrection. For them, keeping the ember was more than survival. It was belief that warmth could be carried forward, that the night never fully wins. The fire didn't die. It waited. Tonight, we have central heat, thick walls, and glowing screens. But warmth, real warmth, hasn't changed. It still lives where it always did. Between breath and trust, between one fire and the next. What they built with grass, hide, and stone we now call radiant floors, insulation layers, thermal systems. The science caught up, but the wisdom was already there, waiting in the snow. On the Great Plains at minus 30 degrees, survival wasn't luck. It was understanding, quiet, patient understanding. They studied the wind, listened to the earth, carried fire in silence, and somehow they passed that knowledge to us. Different age, same need, because they didn't just keep fire to live, they kept it to remember. The flame never died, it only changed hands.